I've got 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Because we'll fail now listen to word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this opportunity to once again. Thank you. Thank you, Lord, for the safety that you give us through the storms. We ask, Lord, that you lead our thoughts and our decisions here tonight, God, that we'd always be found doing things to be pleasing for you. Continue to be with those that are sick and shut in. Lord, most of all, never forget the lost. Continue to lead, guide, and direct us, never keep us in the center of thy will. Holy and righteous name, I pray. Okay, we got the review of the minutes from the previous meeting on June 29th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Pruitt.
Second.
Commissioner Costin, minutes are approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion approved. Okay, the discussion item on your agenda tonight, item A, from what I understand, had the department head meeting yet. So I don't know that that needs to be, if the motion needs to be made to postpone that again, or if.
I've got something on that, administrative leave, I'd like to say. With removing that, that leaves the sheriff's office wide open for a deputy not to be receive any funds if he was involved in a shooting. We're leaving
That in another position.
no, not anything that I've looked at.
Okay.
We're hurting more people, I think, by removing it than we are. I still think it's a department head issue, and that's just my opinion on it. A deputy shouldn't have to use his PTO. Something was to happen. I mean,
I don't disagree with that statement. What are the thoughts on that? I mean,
I don't see the point in removing it, but that's just me. It's up to the department head. The department heads are under the mayor. I mean, it's just, if they're stepping out of line with it, then there has to be some sort of consequences, I guess. I mean, I don't really know what, there's got to, because when I asked last time, there's only one department really abusing it. So I tend to agree. I think it's more of a department head issue than it is a policy issue. And I agree with, critical incidents, not necessarily in law enforcement, but any critical incident that happens in the county, that's going to take away from that employee being able to utilize that part of the policy.
am I mistaken? This may be more of a question for Mr. Zell. The policy only gives 3 days paid leave in the calendar year.
That's correct. And if it's not like you can carry over, and it's not like you have to use it. So it's only for specific circumstances. So perhaps that's where we need to define a little bit more on what those specific circumstances are, or that if, give them to an employee, for example, or if they wanted to use it because they have run out of sick days, for example. That's why we get sick days. These shouldn't be used for things of that nature.
I mean, to bring more to Commissioner Pruitt's point, City time's one thing, but you have an officer involved. I would want. I would want them to be taken care of because they were taking care of us.
I shouldn't have to use sick time. Somebody put a bullet in me out here. I mean,
that's not.
But what I was referring to when I say sick time is somebody that doesn't have any more less sick time.
Somebody that's abused their sick time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and is
That-
trying to use this. in place of their own sick time.
Exactly.
That's where it gets.
Or that's where we need to avoid that. Like why is, it's an extreme circumstance, maybe, it has to be defined. As to what it will be, because I mean, if it's their shooting involved, whether it's at the sheriff office. God forbid is in one of the offices that happened. Why do the employees that have to go through that trauma have to be penalized and use their sick time if we put it across all the offices, not just the sheriff's office? We have to read the severity of the situation.
Is the policy in and of itself filed? What wording? Either for or taken away would you need?
Very big.
On administrative leave with pay, it says the leave shall not exceed 3 working days per fiscal year unless exceptional circumstances exist and cannot be carried forward the next fiscal year.
Would say. Officer involved shooting would be.
Or crash, or somebody reckon one of the other departments. You know what I mean? It's more than just us, like you said, it's a little bit of everything.
There's so much that's going on now in the country that any county employee could be affected. And this could fall under the school, the sheriff's department, administrative offices, anywhere. So I fall back on it being more of a department head issue that the department head needs to fall in line with the policy, and then the policy needs to be, and maybe reword it to maybe help clear a few things up, but taking it out, I don't.
I might add, don't workers' comp pick up when something like that happens? Like an officer involved shooting, workers' comp doesn't take care of that?
If something happens, the county should cover that.
Well, I'm not saying
Just
they
know
did,
it.
don't, yeah, you get 2/3 from workers' comp usually and 1/3 from the. No, okay.
You're talking about an officer involved shooting with a TBI investigation. Officer may be the one doing the shooting.
Well, yes, sir, I'm saying that, but like if they're shot or something like
That's
that,
different.
Okay,
That's-
yes.
That's different. That's the reverse.
right, yes, sir.
But I think what the reference here is, if there's an officer that's involved in the shooting, that they have to be put on leave until
Sure.
such time as the investigation is conducted
Mhm.
thoroughly, and usually doesn't take that long. That was the illustration you were referencing, correct?
Yes, sir.
General, the words under extreme circumstances in there. Maybe how you interpret. I think interpretation would create. Sometimes it's not extreme circumstances or. Interpreted as
Let me
So for
rephrase it.
good cause.
Exceptional circumstances.
say exceptional or extreme circumstances, that's probably. not used to be.
Extreme circumstances rather than.
Exceptional is what they have in there.
Master, was that? I was doing some rearranging here. I had this administrative leave with pay under item 1. Absence with pay for administrative purposes may be granted to full-time employees by their employer as long as exceptional circumstances exist and funding is available for such leave. Such leave is available on days scheduled work. the leave must be for good cause is determined by the employer. And that leaves exceptional circumstances as your guiding star for the purposes of giving the administrative leave. You could put specific examples right after that. Example being, but officer involved shooting, whatever other types of leave, and that would eliminate the issue of the abuse for the holiday pay issues that where they're tagging that on it. That's not a good cause. Or you could use it for reverses with examples that are not false.
Put those examples in there, would that leave interpretation to limit it to,
Or value language. Examples are, but are not include, but are not limited to. And that kind of gives a lot more. The do's and don'ts. You see more of the abuses on it than we do, so.
Judge, you said full-time?
Mhm.
That's what it says right here. It says granted to full-time employees, not a benefit to part-time employees.
Okay, the 3 bailiffs at the courthouse are all part-time.
Okay.
They all carry sidearms.
Think that part full-time and part-time employees.
What was the part-time go with anything else though? What else?
school bus drivers?
School bus drivers.
Would changing exceptional to critical, would that make any difference to help put a little bit more emphasis on? If it's not critical, then you're not gonna use it.
Restricts it that much more. I agree with you.
We also having the examples of being the additional language that including these, but not limited just to those. Would duty fall on me to draft the language or additional language for this section? I guess, Judge, where do I get the language to move forward?
Well, I mean, I don't want to take a stand at it. Of course, what I would do is I would ask Giselle the types of incidents that you see as far as your notes list, where the uses are occurring. And then you have items where those type of situations where you would be allowed officer involved shooting. You can see scenarios where someone could be involved in a situation. They just need to vacate the office because they're where they do that. There are situations for that. But, they do you did change that around. There's no sense in having exceptional circumstances in item 2. This thing shall not exceed 3 working days per fiscal year and cannot be carried forward to the next fiscal. Speaking out there, already put your qualifier. Like you have, if you want critical or exceptional circumstances, maybe it's not a calculation.
Exceptional is where it sits now, and the other 2 terms were extreme and critical. Both are synonyms of one another. So it'd be will of the body.
Who will end up making the decision on it? Critical or not? Department head?
Well, it all comes back to the department head. That's one, but just in my opinion, if it reads exceptional and it reads critical, just changing those two words, exceptional to critical, in my opinion, is gonna give a little bit more validation to something. Hey, okay, this is a critical incident. This is something that's critical, other than,
This ain't just you running out of your time.
yeah,
Because, you know,
because it could be exceptional, somebody used all their vacation time for deaths or vacation, and they just run out. Well, it is, could be an exception because, yeah, you did do all this or whatever. I think changing it to critical would kind of alleviate that misunderstanding. Back to the part-time.
I think there's three. Say they do carry sidearms.
Well, not with just the sheriff's department, but is there any other?
That's it. Trying to figure out what the other part-time people are. You said school bus drivers, not
School bus drivers, cafeteria workers at schools.
But we don't have anything to do with the schools. They are not under this policy.
Okay.
courthouse.
Part-time people.
You could always put, you know, grant it to full-time / part-time employee. I don't think it's gonna mess with anything else. As far as anything else I've read in policy. And change exceptional to critical. You make an amendment to it. Make a motion to change exceptional to critical language to add part-time with full-time and but changing to critical, Judge, we still need to put the exceptions, which one way or the other, just leave it as just the critical.
You can leave it as it is and see how it goes. It changes the content. It really changes to me, it changes that. But you do have provisions here that there's got to be documentation supporting it. So you would not be able to submit this holiday and grant that. That's not going to work. That just simply eliminates that. It really narrows the scope. Here it's a little broader now. Doesn't eliminate it. Doesn't. Simply, when something comes through, just compel the documentation and make sure that these are crossed and eyes. That's just from an administrative point of view.
Make a motion to change the language from exceptional to critical. Part-time. That also.
You also in your motion, make that leave must be for a good cause as determined by the employer.
I'll amend that. I'll amend the motion to take that out.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that part, Mr. Miller?
There's a portion of under in one where it says these must be for a good cause as determined by the employer. You're deleting the good cause all the way around and just getting it to exceptional circumstances. for critical services.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Position. Next item on the agenda, item B, review of departmental authority.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to put that.
Yes, sir.
Also under that item two, administrative leave with pay, it reads this leave shall not exceed 3 working days per fiscal year. And then it says unless exceptional circumstances exist and cannot be carried forward to next year. That phrase, unless exceptional circumstances exist, possibly needs to be deleted too from this portion of it. That way it'll be consistent with what you're trying to accomplish.
Do I need to make a motion for that since it's already second?
Since it's already had a motion in a second and voted on it, that be a separate.
Make a motion to take out the
It'd be into unless exceptional circumstances exist, that phrase.
You got a copy of the policy? I got mine. They don't have it. Then
make a motion to exclude unless exceptional circumstances. Yes. Part two.
I may be off track here. Is that not what we did? We took away, put the critical in, above it, the first part of that.
Something to clarify. In the case of, let's say that there was a shooting in a facility like here in the district. So if an employee gets shot by somebody, came here while we're at work, and that employee gets shot, do they have to use their sick time, or will that be considered also an scenario? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. Just thinking about like Covenant Christian School, Washington place.
How do I word that to where it's not in the line of duty where it affects law enforcement? That's the reason why investigations occur after it happens. Sometimes, I mean, I've even seen it go 2 weeks. People be on administrative leave to pay. As far as victims in a shooting,
I think it goes back to the workers' comp.
Yeah.
That would cover that instead of this part of it, the administrative leave part of it. Basically, the administrative leave part of it is beneficial for the department, for this individual to be off for that reason.
Double check with our insurance company to make sure that they say yes, that will be covered. So I think the background is made. Okay,
Page 27. In the line of duties on page 27, your person. It tells you what happens.
His motion is still,
We still got, we got a motion on the floor, right?
because this right here has got to do with the injury part.
Your motion was to remove that additional language in section 2.
Yes,
To basically line up with what we just been in
Yes.
section.
yes,
Am I understanding?
that's right.
Got a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion on the motion? None. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried.
When will that be? Next month.
If we can get it pulled together, yes, not Monday night,
Monday night?
not this Monday. Unless you're volunteering to work it.
Next item on the agenda is item B, to review departmental authority. Ordinance 66-2012-22. All open for discussion. Anybody?
All right, this ordinance got brought up for repeal. Can't remember what month it was, April 24th. We basically denied it for repealing. I guess the question is, there's a lot of confusion over this. I know why this ordinance was passed to begin with. I agree with why it's passed to begin with, but I've only found flaws in certain wording. Haven't found any flaws in the actual ordinance itself. The ordinance right here, what I've researched goes with the charter. And I can't find anything in the personnel policy except for interviews that would cause the ordinance to kind of go against it. What about you, Judge? What was the reason why to repeal it?
It's the language that uses kind of poorly worded, what you have, you've got your charter 4.01, 4.02, and 4.03 that embodies what the basically normal responsibilities. And you've also got specific provisions under 4.06 in your charter, where he's actually the department head of certain departments just by the charter itself. But ordinance can't do not change that particular, it's already said it was a specific issue in the charter. I think just my way of example, with the fire department headed by the mayor, so person the mayor may appoint the confirmation. He doesn't lose his ability under that particular provision to do oversight or manage or interview unless he delegates that. I don't think the commission can tell the mayor what to do. I just looked at this overall scheme of this, and the language in it is just it's poorly written. Is directors and administrators shall have complete authority and oversight and gas. They don't. That's not correct. You're still going to have mayoral authority in a lot of areas. Point to your charter 4.02. Says there shall be directors and administrators as may from time to time be established by ordinance. Each shall be responsible to the mayor for all duties entrusted to such director or administrator. Your directors or administrators are still responsible to the mayor. Well, as they are elected officials. Sheriff's Department is one thing. Personnel policy passed it in August of 2022 with some of the language. I think in one of the I know it is just preface to your personnel rules and regulations. Says you on section 1, part B says these rules shall be administered by the elected officials of each individual government office in conformity with the Metropolitan Charter. And it falls back to your charter provision. So it looked to me that some of these personnel policy and some of that, and then reading this ordinance just looked like it didn't G-haul one another. I just felt like it's probably better to repeal it and put a different tack on this. That was my only logic and reason for it. I still think that you have any charter provision. Ordinance is not going to be, but it cut the sheriff's office off what he does statutorily by ordinance. Can't do it. You can pass an ordinance that directs him makes an offense that he can administrate his office. That's the same way. But that's an elected office. There's some offices that are recommended and confirmed by the commission. I don't know what Public Works is.
Under the mayor.
It's all of, I think that was, he's the head of the, so he can go through and rather than that 4.06. So I looked at this, it's kind of a vague ordinance. It says, as outlined about in the Hartsville-Trousdale Metropolitan Charter, Article 4. That was my logic behind it. I didn't like the way this was written at all.
Okay.
But but one other thing, I'm sorry. One other thing is if you look at that particular ordinance, it says, and I don't know if they contemplated reading this in light of 4.02, 4.03, and 4.06 in your charter, because when you read it, says whereas the Hartsville-Trousdale County Metropolitan Charter, section 4.01, and it doesn't even mention the things at 4.02, 4.03. It's not one that I think you've got a lot of inconsistencies between that, what you passed in your charter. That was my logic.
Out of the personnel policy.
Yes, your personnel policy, which one of the things that the very essence of your personnel policy, and let me point to that language exactly so you got that. Personnel policy, one of the things that, if you read just the personnel rules and regulations, the purpose. Right? You've got and the objectives that you have in the personnel policies. But if you go back to under E, where it says administration, the rules of this should be administered by the elected officials, not by the department heads. And you've got a lot of department heads that are not elected officials. And whether it's the intent or not, that's what it reads. So your elected officials are the ones that administer those things. And then again, in that same clause, it refers back to the charter. Of course, if you read your charter, certain offices have the capacity to read you just 4.02. There shall be directors and administrators from time to time be established by ordinance. Each shall be responsible to the mayor for all duties entrusted to such director or administrator. Each director or administrator shall conduct the departmental affairs in accordance with such additional instructions as the mayor may give, consistent with all applicable. Directors and administrators shall be appointed by the mayor subject to confirmation by the commission and shall serve until removed by the mayor. That is a specific provision. It's part of your charter. I just didn't feel like that all of those combined that there's very strong inconsistencies. Does that answer your question, Kurt?
Yes, sir. On that, does the personnel policy, does this ordinance still stand?
Well, if you ask me, I mean, I think when you get down to it, you're gonna have a hard time saying that some of that stands in light of what you pass with your personnel policy. When you pass an ordinance, you got an ordinance that conflicts, they're inconsistent with them. Something's gotta give. Typically, like general logic is that the last passed ordinance is going to be the one that, if it doesn't clarify, enhance, if it's inconsistent, it repeals previous ordinances. Does that make sense? That's kind of the rule of law that you have with statutory construction. Here again, you get into some areas of opinion, and that's just my opinion. You can look at it. There's other opinions out there. Regardless, one thing I do is just kind of a side note. There is, and I want to say, and Thomas, if you will help me in this, I believe it's 2001. There's an administrative flow chart that was passed by ordinance. Is that correct?
When the charter was passed, I believe so.
That's not been updated.
It has not.
Okay, well, that is something that this body or somebody needs to look at. Because I can tell you in having reviewed that, there was some inconsistency with that. We don't operate that. We haven't operated. I would certainly appreciate this body, if somebody take a look at something we didn't get to 2 or 3 years ago, but it is, it shows that administrative flow chart. I didn't bring it, really don't have it. Mayor's office all the way to that's the
That is something I've been working on in the background, but I could never get the flow chart to look right. So
well, I just thought I'd bring it up.
Is there a flow chart from 2001? Is that what you're saying? But it's not been updated.
When you look at it, it looks like it was just a template that was used, say, off of CTAS and tailored to Trousdale, but it really wasn't tailored. So it's kind of just an example of how the administration should look like. It really does need to be greatly updated to how Trousdale works.
So if another ordinance was brought to the table, changed up wording where it goes with the charter and voted on by the commission, that ordinance would proceed.
the way we're amending personnel policy, this body. makes it- It's kind of intact. It's an intact document, much like your zoning. ordinance. So if you do that, I think you need to seriously look at your personnel policy. But now, keep in mind, the personnel policy and administration are distinct. They're separate. So at the same time, you're gonna have to look at your administration. But there's some things that are established by charter you can't change. They're not gonna change. 4.06 is just kind of locked in to the extent of what you're looking at, what you're wanting to do. You're trying to clarify. But you know, I'm going to say that there's authority that the mayor's office has that is part of that charter that you just got. The ordinance is on it. As an elected official period. I mean, question. Well, I question with regard to that because it's almost in one respect semantics. Mayor has an absolute right to address a department head, period, and set out protocols with expectations for that office. And that's something that cannot and they should not change. Now, this ordinance number 66 2012-02 operation day to day now. Now, there's going to be some bleeding over between the mayor's authority and operational, just like with sheriff's office. You got a road digging policy, you got a jail policy. County commission doesn't touch that. And right, it shouldn't. That's an internal policy. EMS, you've got I'm sure they've got some kind of policy with regard to transport and things of that nature. How far do you go with that? But now, the way you've set things up, though, you've got emergency services committee. There's a committee that does have to go in and scrutinize every bit of that. The EMS director or public works director, either way. So it's
I think, well, the reason why this was passed, and I'm not, a lot of people wasn't around during this time, and I've said it in the April meeting. But it was to keep checks and balances. It was to stop personal bias from creeping in to the hiring process or the firing process of employees under the department head is completely solely under the mayor at all times. That is what it is. But the people that is hired in here to keep from political favors being done, micromanagement, that's the reason why that last paragraph in that.
thing that's not contemplated. Let's take nepotism. For instance, okay?
Mhm.
That nepotism should be enforced by each department. HR oversees that, and that leads back to the mayor's office. So there's a flow there, and that's from your personnel policy. So that does affect the hiring process. So even though, okay, I want to hire Joe Smith out here, Mary Sally, whoever. If either one of those is a person that is related to someone that's in a direct line of supervision, say a son-daughter situation, there's also got to be a check on that through the mayor's office, through the HR's office to make sure that the policy is enforced. And those things can those are an example of something that can be utilized to do that. Now, I understand the political hiring. That's a totally separate issue. Obviously, we're going to get a lawsuit for a political firing. It's not a political firing at all, but nonetheless, it's there. You can almost create all kinds of scenarios where you're going to have a conflict of some magnitude. Hiring and qualifications, of background checks. CDL holders for drug screens, mandatory drug screens, passing those things, fitness tests. And that's something that in using that with the sheriff's department, they've got to be post-certified, law enforcement. Good thing. Mayor's office never going to oversee, not have anything to do with that. So right up through the, but then again, you've got an elected official overseeing qualifications dealing with certain personnel. So, Ms. Rose Lee, looking for certifications and somebody, hopefully she might get hired on with somebody. Would be the head of that department, but oversee that in that department, and particularly anyone coming in that office. So there's a lot of areas, balancing all these things. I didn't like it, I've explained my reason why I didn't like this ordinance. And I understand the basis for what the thought process was behind it. But it's still think it kind of conflicts with some of the provisions of the past recently. And maybe even some of the charter.
Well, that's what this was about. I was discussing. Just wanted to hear other people's opinion on it. I mean, we all got different opinions, though. I mean, that's to me, it just protects the employee. The employees are who I care about. I don't have the charter 4.06. I don't have that in front of me, but I do have the other.
Those are specific provisions. Whatever reason. Carve that out. And there are some that are absent from that. EMS is one of course. Really not anything the charter says anything about. So. Not
Was EMS part of?
I don't know if you had any EMS.
Actually, they was contracting out. They're in Sumner County.
You didn't have anything. So in that case, no wonder it was silent.
I'm just gonna read y'all what I got, if y'all want to take a minute to listen to it. Go from there. When I read the ordinance, I did come up with some things that was off, especially from the charter. For instance, it says, now there be it ordained, states that the department head shall approve all purchase orders for spending department funds. I'm pretty sure there's a purchasing policy that allows department heads to summon their department to sign purchase orders. I verify that because I'm pretty sure.
I can verify that.
Yeah, I can do.
Next on the list was the fourth paragraph states that department heads, directors, administrators shall consult with the appropriate board, committee, or commission for additional assistance for the operation of that department. Section 402 of the charter states that each director or administrator shall conduct all department affairs in accordance with rules, regulations, procedures by the mayor, in accordance with such additional instructions as the mayor give consistent with all applicable ordinances. You brought that one up yourself. These are just things that I'm seeing inside of the ordinance itself that really doesn't match. charter. It says the fifth paragraph empowers the county commission to nominate and approve that if there is an absence of a department head or lack of nomination from the county executive / mayor within 10 days. But section 402 on this states that directors and administrators shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the commission, and shall serve until removed by the mayor. It's just little things like that that I seen. As far as the last part of it, in my opinion, of course, this is just my opinion, y'all. I'm just going at this like I see it. Section 402 of the charter states each director or administrator shall conduct all department affairs. To me, and I know there's more to that sentence, but the department heads is directly under the mayor, so it makes sense to me. But that goes along with department heads are the ones making the employee evaluations, employee hire, terminations, so on and so forth. That is what I got by researching. Because when it got brought up to be repealed, to be honest about it, nobody really knew what this was. And that's why it just flagged. I flagged it because I don't know. To be honest with you, we didn't know we was voting on. Be truthful about it. We didn't really know. Well, that's the things. That's my opinion on it. I want to protect the employees. I want to have good people brought in here without any kind of bias, without any kind of politics involved in general. Just I want our departments to run smoothly, just like everyone else. We can find a way to keep it that way, to keep the micromanagement from happening or ever occurring ever again like it did in 2012. In that era, I think we need to do what we can for the employees. Really, it's a lot to go over. It took me a long time to go through all this. I mean,
Disagree with you at all. We should have the county employees in front of our minds. But again, I see the other side of this, when you have a charter that is the definitive. If I understand, I don't know anything about politics myself. But if I do understand this correctly, the charter is the end all be all.
it is.
Any and all ordinances that are passed. It's the last one that references that takes precedence over anything else. If there'd been 20 over the same issue, the 21st one takes precedence. If I understand how it all works. Any one of the others were contrary to the charter. Anyway, charter.
I guess it all comes down to interpretation. I mean, I guess that's where we're at.
And for this committee to be able to verify those inconsistencies.
That's why I said in the last meeting, this is going to take some time. That's why I made sure I said that this is going to take a while to pick apart and go through it. I'm sure the flow chart we got to go through. That's going to take some time to go through. It's just that was my issue with feeling it. I guess that's why it wouldn't scrap. But I just there has to be some kind of protection in place. That goes with the chart. I'm not saying go against the chart. Stuff like that. If I got anything else they can go with.
Any other discussion on the ordinance 66-2012-22?
I guess I got something else. What happens now? We still got an ordinance on the books that some opinions is gonna be a good ordinance and some opinions is gonna be not a good ordinance, so we, you know.
We could send it back to the full body. I'm asking, I don't know.
I wouldn't want to unless we edit it. Unless we fix the inconsistencies. Because I don't see the last part being inconsistent. I know there is some that will.
Here's the thing, though, you say to fix the inconsistency, we have to go, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We have to go through the flow chart, and then we have to start with the first one that you read off there in order to get a hold of this one. So, I mean, it's quite a ways from where we do anything without any of it. True, I mean, there's got to be a starting.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
I think back up the fund at the beginning and then go through it all.
With that. Brian, your question is, what happens to this one now while we're going through A to the B side, right?
I mean, in my opinion, and I know this is just my opinion, there's a lot of people that don't. But this ordinance is still in effect unless it's repealed. And I believe it should be. Wording I'm wanting to change is just basic stuff. That has nothing to do with the employees. Bottom part protects the employee.
Judge, if it's repealed, where do we go back to this?
Well, I mean, what I gather is that there's some specific things that you do not want the mayor's office to be able to do. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You come from the side of the coin, I want to protect the employees, all right. But there's a balance in all of that. This is kind of the thought process of you can't take away the authority of the mayor's office to administrate a department that's under his. I mean, there's just $2 cap. I can go straight to a department head and tell them, say, here, these things in your office that need to be corrected. Or even substantive evidence of the proof, you know. We've had a guy that's he's an example. She's at someone's got a drinking problem. Or out there and all that got arrested, he died or something. You're going to have to put discipline down to the extent to where this doesn't happen because why? Because he's got a responsibility to look out for liability issues. That's just that simple. And all departments do, it's not just the mayor's office. So how do you handle it? It's just a administrative style, management style. You don't want to take the mayor's office and put handcuffs on the mayor's office. At the same time, you know, what you're saying is that perceived overreaching on behalf of any one individual. So what's the standard that we go by? How do we direct that? You know, every person is going to have a different thought process. What I look for and wait, we're just talking about, let's just talk about hiring and firing. What I look for an employee or someone that is going to come into Parksville, Travis County, I'm going to look at those objectives under the personnel policy that we define. So this is to promote the highest professional standard that we can. Because that bolsters the public confidence that local governments do its job. So you want to screen individuals. It's not doing that. System that's not doing that. There's got to be some form of accountability. That's, you don't take that away. But otherwise. All this. Yeah. Where- You do it in law enforcement, the expectations, professional standards that you have to abide by. You three gentlemen, more well versed in that than I could ever.
That's, I think that's what us three keep going back to. Side of it, because we're supposed to be held higher.
But let's see that, but the standard that you're held to in your department is not going to always be the same standard in another department.
No, it can't be.
It can't be.
No.
Because of the high responsibility you have.
Right.
So when you've got situations, you've got a situation where your department, you interact with the public in a particular way, the firearms, okay? EMS, rescue, law enforcement, they have a high level of responsibility.
So let me ask you this, say the department head being Sheriff Russell. If he wants to hire somebody that the sheriff thinks would do an excellent job, and somebody comes behind him, we'll say the mayor, and the mayor says, I don't think he'll do a good job.
Sheriff's elected.
He's elected official.
He's an elected official.
That's,
And that's, you know, you've got certain standards that, you know, like I said, earlier, the post certification.
okay, let's take the sheriff out, let's say Keith Cawthon. Same thing. Chief wants to hire this guy, somebody comes along out of the mayor's office and says, I don't think he'll be worth it. Don't hire him.
Who's chief confidence, immediate supervisor?
A new sheriff.
The sheriff's side says, still sheriffs, it falls back on the elected official. In the instance, we're talking about the mayor's office. The mayor's office has got that, there's offices, departments, and heads under it. Public Works, fire department, that's going to be chartered. EMS, EMA, it's all there, and there's more closely associated with his office, the administrative office, which would be HR, the same, and so forth.
I'm going back to the different types of employment, different types of work. You got different levels of professionals. You got certain departments is going to have to be certified, some departments ain't. Some departments you're going to have to have a high level of education. Some departments you don't. This goes back to kind of the department heads, because this ordinance really, when a department head is hired, he's got to pass all the qualifications. He'll pass everything, especially, let's just go ahead and use. Right. I mean, we're talking about, there's a difference there's a difference between hiring somebody certified for this one thing, maybe city convenience center, then somebody public works, the direct, rules, what Cliff does, he has to have a certain level of expertise and get that job. Same thing as EMS. That made 10 years of experience. You got to have certain parts, certain qualifications to even get that stuff. So if he passes all of that, and then he has the qualifications, all this does is make sure that he can use his qualifications, his professionalism, and he can hire in and do everything he needs to do to bring the right personnel in. I haven't seen a mayor yet come in here that is a certified paramedic. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a mayor come in here that's used to be a sheriff. I know the sheriff don't fall under this. Or anything like that. The only thing that I'm saying is there's a different level of people out there that they're gonna have to go through your department head. Your department head is gonna be able to pick those people better than your elected officials. That's the elephant in the room. Does a EMA director have more knowledge and insight than a county executive?
I think that's the way it's inside on the qualifications, but based off what I'm hearing, his department falls under the mayor of the county executive's administration. Again, guys, if I'm out of line or wrong, somebody stop. But if I'm understanding it correctly, the sheriff's department, he takes care of law enforcement. Prestige, she takes care of the taxes coming in. County clerk takes care of tax, and everything involved with that. But the mayor's office specifically has these different duties that do not have an elected official that is trained in what they do. Cliff, go jump on back up, I can. And if I was the mayor, I got to rely on Cliff to get the backhoe to me. But that doesn't change, that wouldn't change the fact that if I was one of those department heads, it wouldn't change the fact that the mayor would be my boss. My job falls under the elected piece. Yes.
I think we're on the same thing. I'm just trying, we're on the same thing. I mean, the directors of the department heads work for Mayor Jack McCall. There is no doubt about it. That's how it is. But if we were sitting at a table, just say an interview was taking place, and you take the EMA director was giving an interview to this guy, and say Jack McCall doing an interview to the guy. Which one would have more insight if that guy can do the job?
I think either one of them could, because it goes back to the qualifications that the job is set. If there's a piece of paper, and I'm not qualified in CPR and the department head is, there's still a list of qualifications that the candidate has to fulfill. And that can be either way. I think the mayor is very capable to look at a piece of paper and say, Brian Crook, you meet all the qualifications that this job is looking for. Just like Sheriff Russell could say, yeah, you fit all of the requirements that's on this piece of paper to be a deputy. I think it goes either way. I think if there's qualifications that you have and they meet the job qualifications that's been put out that you're applying for, I think the mayor's capable of looking and see that, and I think the department is capable to look and see that. It's my opinion.
I think the elephant in the room is that we're being based on the case. And I rely on years of experience, get a candidate. I don't make political judgments. I don't do that. I don't operate on bias. In the case we're talking, I will mention you names, there are about 7 or 8 or 9 reasons. I hired it not based on any one thing. And we took our time to go through the HR process. And I really don't think in this situation I need to defend myself, because I made a calculated judgment on a lot of facts. And I think we're just maybe hung up on one instance.
Maybe one, maybe just few, but Well, what was the unqualified? How was he not qualified?
I don't really think I'm.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not. Be
They-
careful on you.
I mean, there were so many things involved in one particular case, some of which I can't divulge. I made a thorough investigation, including input from EMS employees. And this, I just didn't make an off the cuff decision because I don't like somebody. I'm operating that. We've never operated that. I've devoted myself to fairness for a lot of years. And based on the fact that we have an HR department that a person has to go through and a number of interviews and lots of input, and I really don't think I have to defend myself.
So, you know, I'm not trying to get you to defend yourself. I'm just, it's awful interesting to me that the county is in this uproar over certain items. But that individuals like that come in and put into this county can work for a big agency like WEMA, qualified just fine, but they can't come to Travis County. What's the difference between Travis County way and Wilson County? Different paramedics, different standards, there's a lot, there's a big difference. I work in, but I know there's a big difference.
That's comparing two different law agencies. I think we're getting off topic. I think we need to get back to the matters at hand, just be respectful of everybody and try to finish this meeting up.
Point of order, will take. Any other specific comment for item B? We'll move on to item C, other discussion.
Yeah, I got something. What do we do? Judge? Take it from the top.
It's summary. A variance opinion on a particular ordinance, that personnel policy, it's not gonna get solved tonight. I think probably the best thing to do, the wisest course of action at this point is saying we need to get the flow chart looked at.
Yeah. I'm curious. I haven't seen this.
Would like to. But this really not a personnel policy committee issue. It's what you're not to do, so. I don't think it'd be disseminated, but I think it is, you know, people on that project that I'm talking about. And maybe bring some order back to everything. That would be my.
So is the flow chart not up to date because of the new personnel policy, or is it just not been looked at here?
It's been back since 2001, quite frankly, don't operate tonight, just like a lot of things that are antiquated. At one time, they served their purpose, and now it's changed, so we just need to update it, that's all. It was, you know, we had a very big year last year with mining companies and personnel policies, and sometimes the fires that are on the hill, we don't get to, we gotta get to one last.
Any further comments? You're adjourned.